Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the COVID Long Haulers podcast. We're a community of people who have been brought together by this horrible disease, and we figured it might be helpful to put this show together as a bit of a resource for people who are suffering from long COVID and want to hear the stories of other people who have been through it and how they're surviving it. My name is Rush, and I'll be your host for this episode. Our guest today is Callie. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks a lot. It's good to be here. I feel like having the ability to talk about everything is just super cathartic for us, but also can help some people out. So that's what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Right. My name is Jacob. I go by Kalikaiz on the internet, basically. And I have had long COVID since 2020, April 2020. Before that, I was pretty active. I was really into doing a workout regimen called CrossFit, which is like pretty specific about nutrition as well. So I felt like my nutrition was relatively good. I like to say I ate paleo plus donuts. And
Yep.
yeah, it was basically like good food plus junk food instead of all time junk food. I don't know why,
That
but
sounds like a good balance.
yeah. So, and I was pretty fit. I had pretty good lifting numbers, I felt like, for myself. And, coming into 2020, we were training for a big, long running and biking event, like a relay race that I did with my friends. And then that went virtual. So, uh, on the weekend that we did it, on like the day after we did all of our virtual event, I just started getting pretty sick. That's when it all started.
So you said you got COVID in, was it April 2020?
Yep. Yeah. One of the early
That's so
people.
that was yeah, you were right along with the early people. So what was COVID like for you?
So for me, I basically at first I noticed that I had like this dry cough, and I thought that was kind of odd because I had done a lot of exercise that day. And then the next day, like I got up and I tried to just do like a really light biking session on my assault bike, and I couldn't. What what we usually would be like an easy hour at like 60 RPM, I couldn't maintain 53 RPM without my heart rate being at like 180. I was like, what is happening? It just felt super foreign. And then I realized like, okay, I can't even do this, and I had to stop. So then basically um just I had like suppressed breathing where I could not take a full breath, and then my heart rate would skyrocket if I moved around, and I just felt like my energy was zero, like my body level battery was at zero, and I just like couldn't walk across the house without having to take a nap. It was really, really scary.
And did you know you had COVID then, or were you still like, was it still so early that you weren't really sure?
Well, it's so funny because I got a test like 2 days in, a nasal swab, and they tested me and made me see God when they shoved it into my brain. And
Yeah.
then that comes back negative, and then I come to find out a long time later, like they were trying to be deliberate and not get false positives, but it still felt pretty bad to me. But I'm like, I have exactly the symptoms of COVID, except for like congestion. My ski patrol, my ski patrol chief of the hill was saying like 2 weeks prior, he's like, yeah, if you get COVID, it'll be like 30% suppressed breathing, will be hard to move around. I'm like, oh, that sounds right. But we hadn't seen any, they started lockdown stuff in like March. I hadn't seen anybody for a month. I'd been wearing my mask around, or my cloth mask at least, and felt like it would be really improbable that I would get a random cold that would take me out like that. So
But you think,
I have no physical evidence, I have no test evidence, but I have all of the evidence in the world otherwise.
yeah, but you think you probably caught it at that sporting event?
I don't think so because the event we did was a virtual event, but I was the one that
Oh,
would
right. Okay.
go to the grocery store. I would be going picking up food and stuff, and I just think that moving around the world wearing a t-shirt mask that I ripped out, like we just sewed masks together because they said don't buy the
Yeah.
ventilator ones. Like that obviously did not help.
You said don't buy the ventilator ones.
Yeah, in the States they said that they didn't want you to buy the N95s because putting a run on it would stop the medical workers from getting them. So they asked us to make cloth masks. So we just like cut up an old ratty t-shirt and made cloth masks. We would like wear it. We'd walk across. We were like hiking and we'd have to jump, 20 feet away from everybody, not to be near people. And we just felt like we were putting so much effort into being away from everybody and not getting sick. And then I was the one that got just terribly ill.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you got pretty unlucky there then.
Eh, I think
So how long did you have COVID for? Do you know?
so. My symptoms were like really bad for, I would say, like 3 days where I couldn't really walk around the house. What is odd was I sort of felt normal or fine if I was highly caffeinated and just sitting there. But
Yeah.
if I tried to move, it would just not go well. My heart rate would spike like crazy. And that
Right.
lasted a good 7 to 10 days. Felt a little bit better for a few days. And then it came back really hard for like 3 days. And then it started to slowly taper off as far as like the never gonna, just like intense sickness at that time.
And did you after you felt like you recovered from COVID, did the symptoms get better or did they just keep getting worse?
Well, it was very odd because I just continued to have um, on and off like really bad exercise intolerance, and just feel like I had pretty bad brain fog, I guess, where I would kind of feel like, why am I here doing this thing? Like sort of forgetting what you're doing, walk back and forth in the kitchen trying to put your cup away like 6 times, or
Yeah.
all that stuff. But then my main problems were just this issue with breathing, where as soon as I started moving, I would feel like, oh, I'm out of breath, but my breathing rate wouldn't go up. I wouldn't just start panting. I just wouldn't. I feel like I can't breathe anymore. Like you're suffocating. It's really, really strange. It's like, I guess that's called air hunger. I'd later learned, but that was my main concern. And then like this exercise intolerance. So before getting sick, like some lifts I was doing over 300, 400 pounds. And now, like, if I picked up the barbell, I would just tank and I would be like, oh no, I got to go lay down and just like sleep for 3 hours. It was really, really crazy. So that kind of like was on and off, and not every day was like that. And I kind of attribute that to my my response was basically, okay, I feel like I got really destroyed from this, so I'm going to work out really slow. So I just like, I did a lot of, I started with like 5 minutes on the exercise bike, worked up to 10, worked up to 20, and then worked up a little bit more speed, maybe a little bit of lifting. But I just always felt like it was a risk going and trying things, and I just never knew when it would tank me or not. But for the most part, I was like generally well, but never healthy, which is strange to
It
say.
sounds yeah, it sounds like COVID gave you a real element of uncertainty about what used to be a certain thing for you.
Oh yeah. I mean, that is definitely true. Like when I before that, you can generally plan out how you're doing your training for like lifting or running and kind of periodize or say, "Hey, I did this last week, I'll do this next week." But it was more like, "Hey, I did this last week, today I can't move." Or, "Hey, today I can't
Yeah.
move and now I can pick up 300 again." And I just would never know when I was going to feel good, and it made me like kind of afraid of even exercising, which I knew realistically was going to make me more out of shape and more sick. But I was just like concerned that I would fail at any given time, and then that would make me feel worse because I wouldn't know why I failed, and then it just like spiral out of control, and it just got really like, it was very, very upsetting.
Yeah. So I suppose you, like anybody else who gets long COVID, probably ended up on a bit of a journey of trying to figure out why these things were happening to you and sort of trial and error, trying to figure out what worked for you and what helped.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I basically said, "Hey, I'm sick. I feel like I have some sort of issue that's happening to me. I don't know what it is, and I know of this thing called the paleo autoimmune diet. which is what people are supposed to do if they have autoimmune diseases. So I said, hey, maybe this is an autoimmune disease. I'll just follow that. So generally, just eating whole foods, like single ingredient things like meats and vegetables. And that kept me relatively well. But I would, again, sometimes just tank. I kind of experimented around like, hey, I was feeling okay, and then I had ice cream, and now I'm feel just destroyed for a week. Or we had 3 beers, and now I'm destroyed for a week. And it was just like, just being in a situation where you never know, like you put one thing in your mouth or you do one thing and you can't recover for a week, is it makes you so scared of like doing anything, and you just kind of sit and just think like anything can kill me. I'm walking around and at any moment I could die. It's crazy.
Was it all related to food then? Did you manage to establish a link between what you were putting in your mouth to then feeling terrible for a week?
Mostly just like alcohol and sugar, and those are the things that I kind of avoided. And then I also would avoid like gluten and stuff, and that's just going back to that the CrossFit like whole foods paleo mentality of like eliminate any possibility of there being an issue, and do your best. But for the most part, that was a very very good thing to do. And then I kept seeing a bunch of doctors, and everyone had the classic, "Hey, you're healthy," which
Yeah,
wasn't very
that's a
helpful.
very, very common experience for
I
people
went,
with long COVID is
I went to
doctors
go
telling
get,
you you're fine.
yeah, sorry, I went to go get a like an exercise bike breathing stress test, and of course I'm doing okay on that day, so it was like not a big deal at all for me. And
Yep.
I'm explaining the situation, and the nurse is like, "Oh, that's happened to me. I can barely move, but I have 3 kids, so I kind of just have to deal." I was
Yep.
like, shouldn't someone have an answer?
So, I mean, you must have seen quite a lot of doctors in the early days. What was the experience with the medical profession like?
Well, my first time I actually went to the doctor, I was feeling very terrible, and I thought I was sick again. But we now know that's kind of just like a relapse moment, or like a active symptomology moment or a time frame. I wasn't really technically sick. I just felt awful. And I got an appointment with my doctor for like a virtual visit. And she basically said, "Hey, I think you just had rhabdo and or whatever. So I don't think you really have anything going on. And it wasn't COVID." Like, well, I
What?
think,
Sorry. What is rhabdo? Just for those of us who don't know that word.
right, true. So rhabdo is rhabdomyolysis, which is one of those things that CrossFitters know of because it's overworking your muscles to the point where they actually start breaking down and poisoning you from the inside, which is really, really bad. But definitely not what happened to me, because you would get fully like crazy sore. You would be like peeing blood, and it's a pretty big deal. So it was me like, I'm like, hey, I'm really, really sick with exactly the symptoms of COVID. And it didn't come back positive, but don't we know that there's a possibility of that? She's like, nah, nah. But I'll order you some blood tests.
Like frustrating. Right. Okay.
So I was
So,
pretty sure that rheumatology would help me out. And I'm pretty sure like within in like a year I got referred to rheumatology. And then 3 years later I went to rheumatology because
3 years
three
later.
years later, because in our area there's only one rheumatology place, and they're extremely busy, and they just considered me a non-threat, like a like non-critical, like no
Yeah.
triage. Like they wouldn't put me in because I'm alive and doing okay. It's not like I'm unable to live, but from their point of view, from my point of view, I was pretty unable to live. But from their point of view, you're like, okay, it's fine. Because the medical system seems to be mostly about emergencies and not about like actually preventative or helping you optimize things. And that's just been like
Yeah.
my main qualm with them.
Yeah. No,
The
it was exactly the same with my experience with long COVID. Anytime you ended up being seen by a medical professional, as soon as they establish that you're not imminently about to die, their concern drops very, very low.
Oh, it's
And
so
then it's like
bad.
you almost have to fight just to get them to listen to what you're saying. Okay, I'm not about to die, but my quality of life is miserable. Please listen to me.
There are definitely I think anybody that has to go through long COVID will know that it doesn't feel like you're going to live. And if it doesn't feel like you're going to live, you're pretty sure you're going to die from it. And if
Yep.
you're pretty sure you're going to die from it, but they keep telling you everything is fine, it makes you feel like a psycho. And it makes you feel like, why should I even go to the doctor? And like,
Yeah.
I feel like there's a huge lack of trust now from a lot of people in the medical system because of all that. And I spent so much money out of pocket seeing all these doctors, and in the end I didn't really get anything out of any of them until I got to rheumatology and had already figured it out.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a common sentiment with anybody who listens to this podcast that has long COVID. It's certainly my experience too. Just constantly seeing so many doctors and not getting any answers, and then they start going, well, maybe it's all in your head.
Yeah, that's pretty frustrating. There's and you know there are definitely things that they can test for that we're finding out now. So I don't think it's in anybody's head. I think if it was in a billion people's heads, it's kind of a weird coincidence. A little bit of a coinky dink there.
Yeah, well, it turns out, I think that the last time I looked into the data, there was something like 65 million people worldwide with long COVID. And that's a lot of people to be imagining something.
And that's
And I
probably,
think that's,
is that
sorry,
just
go on.
people that have been diagnosed?
Yeah, that's people that have been medically diagnosed as much as they can with long COVID, because obviously every case is very individual, so it's a bit difficult to pin down.
So in the beginning, when I was going to the doctors, I would explain the situation. Say think I have long COVID. I think this is the problem. I think eventually I figured out that it's like a dysautonomia. I said I think I have this dysautonomia. They say that's interesting. I've never heard of that. Now I go to the doctor, the same doctors. Years later, I'm like, okay. They're like, so what's the problem? Why have you been going here? I say, okay, well, here's the deal. I give them the 10-minute spiel on everything that's going on. Say, I think I had COVID and this I'm pretty sure I'm having this post-viral long COVID thing, and they say, "Oh, that sounds like long COVID." Like, why wouldn't you just? I don't understand. It's so crazy.
So
Oh
how
man.
are you doing now? If we jump to the end of the story just briefly before we go back into it, how are you today?
Well, luckily for me, today I am doing pretty awesome. To be honest, I have had a lot of improvements in health. I don't really have I figured out a lot of things with the help of a couple people and another podcast, which is the Long COVID podcast. That has been really helpful. And I feel like I really have a handle on everything. And I'm exercising very regularly. Having a good time eating and not like being concerned. It's been quite a shift. And for me, it's been almost entirely nutrition based, though I know that's not the same for everybody else, but I do have some theories on why that is the case for me.
We'll definitely get into that. So that's coming up on, well, in April it will be 4 years, right, since
Yeah,
you were infected.
yeah.
When would you say, as in what was the point in that sort of period of time that you started to feel like you were getting back to your old self?
Well, I think that any time that I actually was doing like a keto paleo diet, I was generally okay, which was pretty good. I know post, I just learned recently that like big glucose doses can mess people up that have POTS. It can change their blood pressure, and part of POTS has to do with blood pressure. So that was something that I was doing on accident just because I felt like, hey, this is a good baseline diet to be, and that was really helpful. And
Mm-hmm.
then in summer of 2022, I was pretty focused on being keto, and then we went on vacation and I kind of ate a bunch of junk, and then I was like trying to go back keto. I was feeling crummy, and then I started to get a bunch of heart palpitations and twitching and stuff. And I got in touch with this person from California named Dylan Farr, and come to find out, well, I had heard of him from this fitness podcast called the Wadcast Podcast. It's a CrossFit podcast, and
Mm-hmm.
he did agree to help me out. And I came to find out that he actually has had POTS for a very long time. Um, if anybody's not aware, POTS is a dysautonomia. postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, but it is sort of um, a myriad of different things that can happen to you. But he has POTS specifically from being a pro snowboarder and getting too many brain injuries because
Ouch.
your brain controls all your automatic processes, so that can definitely happen that way. And he put me on a regimen where I was supplementing sodium, and he also had me track my food on an application called Chronometer. And that application on my phone shows all your micronutrients. So he put me on trying to get 5 grams of potassium a day, but without supplementation. And it turns out it comes mostly from meat for me. So that wasn't the thing I was accidentally doing right, which is nice. And then I wasn't taking sodium, but what's funny is like retrospectively, I was probably eating way more sausages than I used to. And I'm like, oh, that has a lot of sodium.
Yeah.
So maybe I was accidentally getting that, and that was like sort of doing it okay for myself, but not to the point I am right now. And then we also found out that I definitely have some issues with histamine in my food, that'll mess me up. So it seems like of my symptoms, there's sort of like two main reasons for them. And so my symptoms of like having difficulty breathing with the air hunger and the extreme exercise intolerance, the heart rate spikes, fasciculations, like muscle twitching and stuff, all of that seems to be pretty related to this blood, it's not blood pressure, it's blood volume for me. So it's this hypovolemic POTS kind of symptomology. And by taking a bunch of extra water and sodium, then I'm able to like completely get rid of all that. Like it's completely gone. It was constant day to day, now gone. So check that off the list. It's really amazing. But now I just have to supplement sodium like all day, and I'm just have to be on top of it. But I think that's probably worth the win.
And did you have any hints of these symptoms before COVID?
The only thing that ever happened to me as far as like the POTS style symptoms was that I would stand up and get dizzy sometimes. Like that's called vasovagal syncope, and that is like a blood pressure, blood volume thing. So I do think that maybe COVID like made that worse potentially, but that was the only thing that really happened. I don't think I ever got muscle twitches or anything, and definitely not the heart rate spikes or the fatigue, because it feels
Yeah.
the fatigue is very strange, or not the exercise intolerance type fatigue. I mean, it basically feels like you ran a mile as fast as you possibly could, where if you had run it any further, you would have died. And then you're laying there at the end completely gassed out. But for me, that was walking across the house. So it was pretty intense.
Just because I know long COVID for me, what you've said sort of resonates with me because it took a few things that I think I had beforehand and dialed them up to 11, made them really bad. And then
Yeah.
it also introduced a bunch of new things that I never had before that I now have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. And then the other major symptomology that I had was like kind of this brain fog, which I think is pretty not specific from a way of categorizing it, but it's like I can't think very well, I don't remember things very well, having a hard time like, getting stuff done, and then also a really crazy fatigue, which is different than the I can't move fatigue, but it's like I'm not gonna be able to do anything today. And I said this a
Mm.
bunch of times, but basically like the exercise intolerant fatigue, it feels like there's literally no way that I can do this right now. And the mast cell histamine fatigue, it feels like I can't even right now, guys. Your body's just like, that's not gonna happen. Don't worry about it. Like you're never gonna get off the couch, you're never gonna get out of bed, you're never gonna walk upstairs. If you want to brush your teeth, nah, we'll put that off till tomorrow. That's kind of what it feels like, but it is like a fatigue where you have no energy to accomplish anything in a sort of a different no energy way. Like one feels like mitochondria not being able to function, and one feels like I can't force myself to actually accomplish this. It's so weird.
So you mentioned a few things there, like histamines and mitochondria. Now, because I've spoken to you before and I know a little bit of your history, and also because I've done lots of research on long COVID, I kind of know what the interactions are there that you're referring to. But can you just give a quick explainer for people who might not know as to what you mean by those things?
Right. Throughout the 3 years of first being in long COVID, I've ended up finding out that a lot of people that have long COVID or this post-viral syndrome, they have overactive mast cells, and mast cells can have they deal with histamine, I guess, in your body, which histamine is some sort of signaling hormone. But if you ingest it and you have problems where your mast cells are overreactive, they can react way too much, and then you can have like gut-brain problems. Uh, you can have stuff like rashing. I got rashing. You can have nerve pain, um, and I think it can also affect It can affect swallowing. I had some issues with swallowing. It can affect stuff like the gut, where you get acid reflux. Pretty crazy because every single cell in your body, every single system in your body has mast cells involved. So it can really just affect anything if it gets out of whack.
And there's food types that are high histamine and low histamine, right?
Right. That was something that I was trying to learn over time. Because when I first started working with Dylan, I was like, "Oh, I'm eating paleo. It's all good." And then I had a Chipotle meal where I had a bunch of peppers, and I felt terrible for 3 days. And he's like, "Yeah, man, it was the peppers." I was like, "What? Peppers? It's supposed to be so benign." So now I've gotten to this point where I will look up food if it's a new food. I type in peppers space histamine, say go in Google, and then it says high histamine. And I have to say, okay, I'm not eating that, which is
Yeah.
funny. But
One of
it's kind of like a process of test and retest and figure it out over time. And there's a couple little tweaks to that have been somewhat useful for me. One is like taking DAO or liver pills before eating the food has actually made the response a lot better because that helps break down the histamine. And then if I accidentally histamine myself and I can tell that I did do that, then I can also take a Zyrtec, which is the one super helpful thing that the rheumatologist recommended. He said, take Zyrtec and you'll feel a little bit better because that's an antihistamine. So that actually has been pretty useful. If I ever screw up, I have a little bit of a safety net, which I definitely appreciate.
And you, because we talked about this before, you recommended that if somebody wants to try and find out if they do have a histamine issue from long COVID, they can actually take an antihistamine and see if that improves their symptoms.
I think that's probably a very low impact way of doing a quick test. You could just take one dose of a 24-hour histamine and see if you feel a little bit better. And if you do, then maybe that's something that you want to kind of go into and try to eliminate that from your diet and see if it helps you out. That's just been such a huge thing for me.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion. Now I know histamine definitely affects a certain portion of the long COVID community. I've when I joined the long COVID community that we're in, I was desperate to try everything and anything to try and make my symptoms less severe. So I tried the antihistamine or low histamine diet rather, and I do remember it being very difficult to adjust to that for
Yeah.
my lifestyle because it's all of the things that I enjoy eating or would eat normally. Uh, no longer viable. Can't have tomatoes. Can't eat peppers. Can't eat any spicy food. You know, it's just like I don't want to live anymore if I can't have those things. But I remember, I remember a specific point in the supermarket, like staring at a package of food, going, I have no idea if I can eat this. And then I'd have to spend 5 minutes on Google just googling the ingredients, trying to figure out if it was safe to eat. So it is a difficult lifestyle to adapt to. Fortunately, I'm not one of those that because after I did it for about 3 or 4 weeks, I sort of realized that my symptoms weren't improving from being on the low histamine diet. So I was able to rule myself out as being one of the people that has that issue. My issues are related more to the vagus nerve, but we'll probably get into that in a different episode. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely something that people can check out. And like Callie says, if you do want to just do a little test with an antihistamine, it might give you an indicator, and you can always try elimination diets like low histamine diets to see if that helps improve things as well.
Right. For me, it's really not it's not difficult in any way because I only have to get rid of a couple of things like peppers or tomatoes. And I wasn't eating too much of that anyway because for me, eating a paleo whole foods diet, I'm literally just picking a couple of ingredients and making the food myself. Whereas if you were going out and getting a sandwich or something, that might be pretty complicated. One of the things that I recently figured out were not great with strawberries, which was pretty disappointing because my son loves strawberries and I was eating those as well on the side.
Yeah.
I was feeling kind of terrible. Like, oh, okay, we figured that one out. But I actually am able to eat hot sauce and some spicy food, so there's hope.
Hot sauce is mostly peppers usually, isn't it?
I think so, but I think that just like because it's so processed, maybe it just gets rid of the histamine. I have no idea why, but I don't take my Tapatio away. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I'm so glad I can still eat hot sauce.
And also, I was drowning my food in hot sauce, which is high in sodium, right? So maybe that was another way my body was figuring it out on its own a little bit.
Well,
So right
there's that
now,
keyword sodium again. And for those who aren't aware, Cali has a bit of a reputation in our community as being the salt master, and preaching the virtues of salt to everybody that comes in. You want to talk a little bit about salt and how that helped?
right, so I found out eventually that POTS patients are recommended to take an additional 3 to 5 grams of sodium, but the recommendation is to take, I think, 6 to 10 grams of salt added onto your daily diet, which is salt is 50% sodium, like table salt. So that would be 3 to 5 grams of sodium added on to the normal diet, which is generally, according to the internet, it's around 3 grams of sodium for on average in the United States. So, doing some quick off the napkin math or whatever, that's you're looking at 6 to 10 grams of sodium a day, depending on activity level and stuff like that. And based on my own experience as a 6 foot, 190 pound man, 5 grams of sodium for me tends to be very good. Um, and then if I exercise at all, I have to add some on the before and after because when you sweat, you lose sodium. But one of the things that I learned was that people with this POTS condition, they tend to excrete sodium at a higher rate than general, which makes your blood volume low for hypovolemic types. And then that low blood volume can cause issues with the exercise intolerance and then heart rate spikes and stuff. But it also seems like all of the different electrolytes and micronutrients are super helpful for supporting your cell's mitochondria. And since that's the powerhouse of the cell, I'm not getting the powerhouse of the cell completely getting emptied every time that I move around. So all of that together seems like it's been very good for me and pretty helpful. So hopefully it helps other people. And pretty much when people come in and they're like, I have heart palpitations, I have exercise intolerance, I'm like, you should take salt. If you have any indication that you might have any sort of POTS variation, you should take salt and just see what happens. Although I was talking about it and, the recommendation is, hey, maybe don't do this if you're like have other chronic conditions. So one thing that people that have long COVID have to think about is if I'm overweight or have high blood pressure or um, any other like chronic illness, you probably need to work on your own personal diet and try to like fix that as well, kind of in the meantime. So there's a lot going on, but man, adding salt throughout the day, it's just been such a godsend for me. Like I was in a point where, like I said, I was afraid to go to the gym because I wouldn't know if I could pick up the bar or not. And then as soon as I started supplementing salt and looking at the potassium and everything, I exercised for like 18 days in a row. And then I was telling the guy that was doing my nutrition, I'm like, I'm really tired. He's like, yeah, you exercise 18 days in a row. You got to stop. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot what it was like to actually be capable. I just thought I was a superhero.
Yeah. And you actually you drink a salt solution, don't you?
Yes, I take one called LMNT or Element. I like to call it LMNT, but it's called Element. And that one is 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. The other one that I take is Vitasium by the company called Salt Stick. That one actually has been around for a very long time, specifically for treating people with POTS. So that's formulated for people with POTS, which is pretty cool. And then I also have a little side recipe for if you want to save some money, because all these things are kind of expensive. But you can take 2 tablespoons of table salt and add that into a little container. And then take 1 tablespoon of um, light salt, which is potassium chloride and sodium chloride. So it has less sodium, but has more potassium. And you add that in. So you have two tablespoons of salt, 1 tablespoon of light salt, mix it all together. And then 1/2 teaspoon of that will be around the same as an element salt, where it's 1,000 milligrams of sodium, around 200 to 300 milligrams of potassium. And you can put that into water. So I usually use my mason jar, which is 800 milliliters. And then you also have to do, if you're going to put that into your jar, you will need to add some sort of citric acid. So like lemon juice or lime juice. Did a little bit of a test with the pH meter. So it ends up being around 2 teaspoons for me in the water plus that salt mix. And that'll be an appropriate pH, because if you put just salt in there, you will throw the pH off in your stomach, and then you'll get horrible indigestion. Heartburn will happen immediately, and you might get the runs. It's just not a good deal. I was telling people to take salt in the Discord, and one person goes, "I ate a tablespoon of salt. What should I do?"
Oh God.
I was like, "No, you've made
That's
a
not how you
terrible
do it.
mistake." The thing that you should
Did we
do
ever
now
hear
is
from
drink a
that guy
lot of
again?
water. Well, for the a few days, yeah, but he was like, "I think I've made a terrible mistake." Yes, you have. Just make sure that you. I mean, this was something that I also did not know about at first, so I definitely understand, and that's why I have to mention it, because otherwise people will make that mistake. I put too much salt in my water, and it's a crazy heartburn.
Always in moderation with everything in life, right?
Yeah.
Is
So,
there a test you can take to see if you have POTS?
well, actually, yeah, there's a thing called a tilt test, but one of the things you can do is you can do the standing test, the 10-minute standing test, which I just recently learned about. But I think what it is you lay down on the ground until you're stable, you have a stable heart rate, and then you stand up tall. Make sure if you think that you're going to pass out, if there's a chance of that you're supervised so someone can help you. And then you see if your heart rate increases by a large amount. I think the recommendation for diagnosing someone on the tilt test is plus 30 beats per minute. But if you do it standing up, I was listening to the long COVID podcast, and she was saying she had a doctor on there said that if it's plus 20 beats per minute, it's still like POTS ish. And since it's a spectrum, I would definitely recommend at least getting some extra electrolytes in. You need it.
All right, and yeah. So just to touch on one, I think, final but very important thing before we start to wrap things up is the sort of mental side of long COVID. Now, it's obviously you've been immersed in the long COVID situation for a very long time, from the earliest outset of the pandemic. And not only must it have been incredibly confusing and new for you to go through long COVID at a time when people didn't even really know what that was or what that meant, but it must have taken quite a lot of a mental toll on you, right?
It's it's definitely tough, and it's sort of hard to talk about as well. But I'm gonna do my best. If I get choked up, I'll let you know.
Okay.
I would get real. I think people that are really have chronic illness, they have a lot of trauma from it, and especially even from just the initial infection. And like I said, I used to be relatively capable, and I feel like I am now again. But you go through a point in your life where you feel like you're completely incapable, or you are completely incapable, and you have no idea if or when it's going to happen, or happen again, or end. So all these unknowns, they just make you feel completely. You're just scared. I felt like I was scared of everything I was ever going to do. I didn't know if I could go on any activity or anything like that. And now I feel like I have a handle on it, and because I know like the cause and effect, then I feel like I have not only control over the scenario, over the situation, but I also know after the fact when something happened so I can not do it again. So that's just given me such a better outlook on life, and like I feel much more positive than I did before. I also have learned to kind of like give myself slack. Basically, I would always try to like, if I did 100 pounds next week, I'm going to do 105 pounds and then just keep adding on from there. But I kind of like I got into a workout regimen where I just do what I can, like work up to a single and then back off sets. And that's sort of mentally gotten me better in a situation where I'll do what I can today. And if I hit the limit or if I can't go as far as I wanted, that's fine. You just do what you can. And I think that's been really a big level up for me. So I like that as well. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it
Like
makes
it,
perfect sense.
like I was talking to people, I think in the Discord, they're like, "Well, I want to go out and move, but I'm afraid." And I think that if you just move, you do what you can, maybe that will be enough to help, get you out, or maybe you'll surprise yourself, maybe you won't, but as long as you're like kind of be a little scientific about it, and I'm an engineer, so I have to be a little scientific about it. You just kind of see where it goes and what happens and try to work your way through it. But hopefully, like my fixes were, like I said, were all food related. But I know that some people have vagus nerve damage, where that's more like, how are you going to fix your nerve damage if it's inflamed? And I think a lot of that for me not having that was because of my diet being very low inflammatory, and then also just my general like demeanor of I'm just trying to be relaxed on any given day, and those kinds of things like you can maybe handle from a different way. I think that the chronic inflammation is something that people need to think about as well. And I just from doing CrossFit and like eating being such a big impact on everything and seeing the cause and effect all the time, I'm just like so zeroed in on nutrition that I feel like maybe it's a little bit over the top, but it's been huge for me.
Yeah, it's what has worked for you, so it's
Yeah.
important to keep that up, isn't it?
I think right now I'm feeling pretty positive, and the main thing that I wanted to do was just make sure that I'm in the Discord and in the community around just to help people out, point them in the right direction. A good friend of mine just got long COVID a little over a year ago, and when that happened to him, I was kind of just on my own, feeling good, and I realized that I needed to go out there and try to make it so that not everybody has to go through the dark times because they are the worst, and I don't want anybody else to have suffer any longer than they already have.
Yeah, and that's what's been great about the community that we're in. I think it's certainly helped me through the dark times. I wish I'd found it sooner, to be honest. I didn't really figure out that I had long COVID until I'd already been suffering through it for about 3 or 4 weeks. But after I found the Discord and was able to connect with all these people, including you, and learn about their stories and find the sort of common ground that we all seem to have with these symptoms, it certainly made that struggle a lot easier. It's almost like crowdsourcing as well, in a sense. You were
Definitely.
crowdsourcing, you were outsourcing the sort of stress and trying to piece all the puzzle bits together and figure out what was going on with a group of people who were all going through it at the same time.
Yeah. It's just good to have a community that understands what you're talking about. Like we said, you talk to your doctor and they certainly don't know. Your family doesn't really understand, but they can try to cope or like help you. But there's some people that actually really do understand.
Yeah, and it's the people who have been through it. Well, I think that sort of brings us towards the end of the episode. Kelly, is there anything you wanted to talk about that we haven't covered?
No, I don't think so. I feel like I hit the high points, and if anybody wants to know more or is interested in sharing, I think that it's really useful to continue to provide people information. And you can always join the Discord, and I'll generally be around, and other people are around as well to help. So make sure that you remember that other people have gone through this before and walked the path, and there have been people that come out on the other side. And I think that there's hope for everybody to be able to do the same.
All right. Well, in that case, I'd just like to say thank you, Saltmaster Kelly, for coming on today and sharing your experiences. I hope people found it interesting. I know I did.
Thank you. I think I'll have to interview you next time.
Yeah, not too long from now. If you're listening to this on Spotify and you would like to join our Discord support community, like Callie says, it's been really helpful for a lot of people. We'll leave a link in the description so that you can come and find us. And we're hoping to do regular episodes like these. I don't know how frequent they'll be, just as and when we get a guest, I'd imagine, but hopefully maybe once a month. Because everybody's story is so different and everybody has a unique experience with COVID, the stuff we've covered with Callie will resonate with some people, but there are lots of other stories to share and people who touch on entirely different things than the stuff we've covered today, like, for example, the vagus nerve. So please do subscribe and check up on us later for future episodes. And until next time, folks, this has been the COVID Long Haulers podcast, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, everybody.